A town of 28,000 people went to sleep that night. By morning, most of them were gone. No explosion, no warning sirens, just a wall of mud, moving faster than anyone could run. A low roaring sound cuts through the night as pressure releases high on the slopes of Nevado del Ruiz, where volcanic heat has begun melting ice into fast-moving mud flows. The ground trembles lightly, not from a major quake, but from distant energy traveling through valleys already aligned with past destruction. For a moment, nothing seems urgent. Then it shifts. A dense lahar breaks free, accelerating downhill at speeds approaching 60 kilometers per hour. Thick, heavy, unstoppable. It grows as it moves, swallowing everything in its path. Streets disappear in seconds. Homes are hit without warning. Walls collapse as the force tears through structures. Wood splinters, concrete fractures. Entire foundations give way under the pressure. People wake in darkness, disoriented. No clear view, no warning systems, no time to react. The sound grows louder. A voice calls out from somewhere in the blackness, then is swallowed by the noise. The mud keeps moving, carrying debris. Vehicles, pieces of homes, trees ripped from the ground. Entire sections of the town begin to vanish. By morning, the landscape is unrecognizable. Beneath the surface, thousands are gone. Armero sits quietly in central Colombia, about 48 kilometers from Nevado del Ruiz, its land shaped by fertile volcanic soil that has supported farming for generations. Rice fields stretch outward. Cotton and coffee sustain local livelihoods. Daily routines follow a steady rhythm, built on trust in the land that feeds them. Above it all, Nevado del Ruiz rises, its summit covered in snow and glaciers, appearing stable under normal conditions. But that stability is deceptive. Beneath the surface, magma begins to move, slowly increasing pressure within the volcano's structure. This internal shift starts to release energy, triggering small earthquakes that ripple through the region. At first, the signals seem minor, but they continue. By late 1984 and into 1985, seismic activity increases. Steam vents release gases rich in sulfur dioxide, indicating that magma is rising closer to the surface. Scientists monitor these changes carefully, recognizing a pattern that has led to eruptions before. In September 1985, phreatic explosions send columns of steam into the air. These eruptions occur when rising magma interacts with underground water, rapidly converting it into steam. The pressure builds. The system destabilizes. Hazard maps are created. They clearly show that if an eruption occurs, lahars could travel through river valleys directly toward populated areas, including Armero. These flows, made of water, ash, and volcanic debris, can move fast and grow in size as they descend. Warnings are issued by volcanologists. The risk is real, but the response remains limited. Distribution of these hazard maps is inconsistent. Many residents never see them. Some versions are unclear, lacking proper scale or explanation. In certain cases, Armero appears outside the highest risk zones, creating a false sense of safety. At the same time, evacuation plans are discussed but not enforced. Officials hesitate. An evacuation would disrupt agriculture, damage the local economy, and create uncertainty without a visible disaster. And because the volcano has remained mostly quiet for decades, the urgency does not translate into action. Communication begins to break down. Warnings do not reach everyone. Some residents hear about volcanic activity, but without clear instruction, they continue their routines. Shops remain open. Fields are worked. Families stay inside their homes at night, unaware of the exact threat forming above them. A farmer pauses, looking toward the mountain, unsure what to believe. Life continues. The volcano, often called a sleeping presence, gives no obvious sign of immediate danger from a distance. Its snow-covered peak reflects calm, not destruction. But beneath that calm, pressure continues to build. Gas emissions increase. Chemical readings indicate temperatures between 200 and 600 degrees Celsius inside the volcanic system. This means magma is not only present, it is active, releasing energy into the surrounding structure. Each signal connects, each warning points in the same direction, but the chain of response never fully forms. And as the days pass, the gap between scientific knowledge and public awareness grows wider. The ground remains still, the town remains active, and above them, the system continues to move toward release. On November 13th, 1985, at 9:09 p.m., Nevado del Ruiz erupts after months of increasing internal pressure, releasing acidic material high into the atmosphere as magma finally breaks through the surface. The explosion itself is not the deadliest force. It triggers something far more destructive. Heat from the eruption rapidly melts the glacier ice covering the summit. Water forms instantly, mixing with ash, pumice, and fragmented rock. This combination creates lahars, dense, fast-moving mud flows capable of traveling long distances with growing force. They begin to move. Pulled by gravity, the lahars rush down the volcano's flanks, entering river valleys that naturally channel their direction. These valleys act like pathways, guiding the flow directly toward populated areas. At first, the eruption does not appear catastrophic from a distance. Ash had already fallen earlier in the day. Many believe the situation has stabilized. There is no immediate panic. Night falls. Visibility drops. Storm clouds move in, bringing heavy rain and thunder that masks distant sounds. Communication systems weaken. Electrical interruptions begin to spread across regions. Warnings attempt to move through official channels, but they slow down, then stop. No large-scale evacuation takes place. People remain inside their homes, following earlier instructions to stay calm. Radios provide little clarity. Phones fail. The chain of response breaks under pressure, and above them the lahars continue to grow. As they descend, they absorb everything in their path: soil, vegetation, rock, increasing in mass and density. Their speed remains high, reaching up to 60 kilometers per hour in narrower channels. Each second adds weight. Each kilometer adds force. A car is lifted and carried without resistance. The flow widens. In the Gual River Valley, it expands to nearly 50 meters across, transforming from a channel into a moving wall of debris. And still, no one sees it coming. The distance between the volcano and Armero, nearly 48 kilometers, gives the illusion of safety. But distance does not slow the flow. It strengthens it. By the time the lahars approach populated areas, they are no longer simple mud flows. They are fully formed destructive systems. Deep, fast, unstoppable. And the town ahead remains in darkness, waiting without knowing why. As the lahars surge through narrow valleys, their speed increases, driven by gravity and confined terrain that forces the flow forward with greater pressure. What begins as a mixture of water and ash transforms into a dense, moving mass, pulling in rocks, trees, and soil, expanding with every kilometer traveled. Rivers begin to rise, not with clear water, but with thick, gray mud. Channels overflow as the volume multiplies, pushing the flow beyond its natural path. The Gual and other river systems swell rapidly, carrying the lahar closer to populated areas with unstoppable force. In Armero, small signs begin to appear, subtle at first. The ground feels different. Water moves where it shouldn't. But without clear information, the threat remains misunderstood. Then, the power fails. Lights go out across the town, cutting visibility to near zero. Radios fall silent. Communication breaks completely, isolating thousands of people at the exact moment clarity is needed most. The first wave reaches the outskirts. It doesn't stop. It crashes into structures, weakening foundations and blocking roads within seconds. Entry and exit points disappear under layers of mud, sealing off escape routes before most people realize what is happening. A car engine revs, then drowns in mud. Some residents try to move. They step outside, they run. But movement becomes harder with every second. The ground thickens. The air fills with noise. Another wave follows. Larger, heavier. It pushes deeper into the town, carrying debris from earlier destruction, adding weight and force to what comes next. A child calls for help into the darkness. No answer returns. Vehicles stall and are abandoned. Streets vanish beneath shifting mud. People lose direction, unable to see more than a few steps ahead. Each wave builds on the last. Each second reduces the chance of escape. Structures collapse under pressure. Walls buckle. Roofs sink into the rising mass. Entire sections of Armero begin to disappear, not from fire or explosion, but from burial. The flow deepens. Movement slows. Then stops. And for those still trying to escape, the path is already gone. The lahars reach peak intensity as they enter Armero just before midnight, their mass now fully formed after traveling nearly 48 kilometers from Nevado del Ruiz. What began as melting ice has become a 30-meter deep moving force, surging through the town at destructive speed. It doesn't slow. It spreads. Within minutes, thick mud covers entire sections of the town, burying buildings and infrastructure under layers of debris. Homes collapse as pressure builds against walls and foundations, trapping people inside or pulling them beneath the surface. The landscape disappears. Streets are no longer visible. Landmarks vanish. Direction is lost. A man reaches for a doorway, but it's already gone. The mud carries trees, vehicles, fragments of houses, each object adding weight and impact. The front of the flow crushes anything in its path, while the slower sections trap people in place, locking them into the rising mass. Movement becomes impossible. Breathing becomes harder. Those caught inside the flow struggle to stay above it, holding on to debris, anything that remains above the surface. Then another surge arrives. It deepens everything. Rescue is not possible. The conditions are too unstable, too dangerous. The town is still being consumed, wave after wave continuing to push through, extending the destruction. Time stretches. Minutes feel longer. Then it begins to slow. The energy fades as the flow settles into place, leaving behind a thick, unmoving layer of mud that covers nearly everything. And as the motion stops, the scale becomes visible. Large sections of Armero are gone. Not damaged, not broken, gone. Buried beneath a surface that no longer resembles a town, but a silent, flattened field of debris. The impact on residents unfolds in silence as the movement stops, but the consequences continue. Thick mud holds people in place, pressing against their bodies, restricting movement, limiting breath as weight settles from all sides. Survivors try to move. They can't. The density of the material locks limbs in place, making even small motion impossible. Some remain trapped for hours, partially buried, exposed to cold air above and heavy pressure below. A hand rises from the mud, then slowly disappears. Families are separated in seconds. One moment they are together inside their homes, the next they are pulled in different directions by collapsing structures and shifting debris. Voices call out in the darkness, but distance and obstruction swallow the sound. Children struggle to stay above the surface. Elderly residents cannot move fast enough. Time becomes critical. Many lose their lives within a short period, not from impact alone, but from suffocation, injuries, and the inability to escape the environment surrounding them. And yet, some remain alive. Omaira Snichez, a 13-year-old girl, is found trapped beneath the remains of her home. Her legs are pinned under heavy debris, submerged in water and mud, making movement impossible. Rescuers reach her, but without proper equipment, they cannot lift the weight holding her down. She speaks calmly. She answers questions. She waits. Hours pass. Efforts continue, but the conditions prevent extraction. The water around her rises slowly, and exposure begins to take its toll. After nearly 60 hours, her body weakens, and she dies at the site, surrounded by those who could not save her. Nearby, survivors are pulled from the mud, injured, exhausted. Some are taken to makeshift medical stations set up in nearby towns like Rida and Abagu, where doctors begin treating wounds, infections, and trauma under limited conditions. A child sits alone, covered in mud, staring at nothing. Thousands are displaced. Evacuation centers form quickly, housing those who have lost everything: homes, belongings, entire families. The physical damage is immediate, but the psychological impact begins to unfold slowly. Nightmares follow. Silence lingers. Communities that once depended on shared routine now face absence, loss, and uncertainty. Entire neighborhoods are gone. Familiar places no longer exist. And for those who survived, the event does not end when the mud stops moving. By morning, the flow has stopped, but the destruction remains fixed in place, covering what was once Armero under a continuous layer of gray mud stretching across kilometers of land. What used to be streets, homes, and farms is now an unbroken surface of debris, reshaped in a single night by forces that began far above the town. There is no clear boundary between where the town ended and the disaster begins. It is all one surface now. Rescue teams arrive hours later, delayed by destroyed roads and collapsed bridges, moving carefully across unstable ground that pulls at every step. In some areas, the mud reaches depths of over 4 meters, making movement slow and dangerous. They call out. They listen. Few voices respond. The scale becomes clearer with each passing hour. Entire neighborhoods are missing. Structures are either buried or destroyed beyond recognition. Broken trees, fragments of walls, and scattered belongings emerge from the surface, marking where life once existed. The air carries a heavy, persistent smell. A rescuer pauses, unable to continue for a moment. Efforts continue, but conditions limit what can be done. Many who might have survived initial injuries are no longer reachable in time. The window for rescue closes quickly, replaced by recovery. Numbers begin to form. More than 23,000 lives lost, thousands injured, thousands more left without homes. The site becomes a place of absence. Armero is not rebuilt. It is left as it is, a location marked by loss rather than reconstruction. Over time, it becomes recognized not just as a disaster site, but as a reminder of what happens when natural forces meet delayed response. Investigations begin. Scientists and officials analyze what happened, tracing the sequence from early warnings to final impact. Hazard maps had identified the risk. Volcanic activity had been recorded for months. Warnings had been issued, but communication failed. Decisions slowed. Evacuation was not enforced, and the consequence became irreversible. The discussion expands beyond the event itself. It moves into systems, preparedness, responsibility. Colombia begins to change its approach. Monitoring of volcanic activity improves. Emergency response systems are strengthened. Planning becomes more structured, aiming to prevent a repeat of what occurred here. Nevado del Ruiz remains active. It is watched closely now, with instruments tracking movement beneath the surface, measuring gases, recording seismic signals that once went unnoticed. Because the mountain did not change, the response did. Memorials are established near the site, marking the location where thousands lost their lives. Names are remembered. Stories are preserved. Visitors walk across ground that still holds the shape of what happened. A mother's name carved into stone, beside thousands of others. The event becomes more than history. It becomes instruction, a demonstration of how small delays can lead to large consequences, how warnings must reach people clearly, how understanding risk must translate into action before the moment passes. Because the conditions that created this disaster still exist. Volcanoes still erupt. Glaciers still melt. Lahars can still form, and in regions built along their paths, the same sequence can begin again. But now, there is awareness. There are systems. There is memory. And that memory carries weight. Because in Armero, the disaster was not only the result of natural forces, it was also the result of time, running out before action was taken. and the ground that remains silent today still holds the scale of what was lost.